Shortly before the start of the War of 1812, the new Théâtre d'Orléans began construction on Rue Orleans between Royal and Bourbon, but couldn't open until 1816. The theater was designed by a familiar name, Louis Tabary. Unfortunately, shortly after opening, the new theater was consumed by a fire that also claimed Tabary's first venue, the now disused Théâtre de la Rue Saint-Pierre. The Orleans was rebuilt, adding a new, richly decorated ballroom and reopening in 1819. The ballroom and the theater were designed so that they could open up to nearly the entire length of the block, perfect for a city that loved opera and grand balls and gatherings. The new theater was managed by a career gambler named John Davis, who, despite his Anglican name, was a Creole through and through. According to historian John Kendall, Davis had, quote, somehow, somewhere managed to obtain a fine musical education and had learned all there was to be learned about the exacting business of directing an opera house. In the first 5 seasons that Davis ran the Théâtre d'Orléans, his company presented over 140 operas with 50 American premieres, including Rossini's The Barber of Seville, Donizetti's Lucia di Lammermoor, and Meyerbeer's The Huguenots. This particular opera would also play a role in one of the city's greatest theatrical losses nearly a century later. Because of the famous hot, humid, muggy, unforgivingly oppressive weather that defines summer in the Deep South, most theaters in New Orleans were closed from late spring to late autumn or rented out for other, braver companies to swelter. Realizing that his wealthy patrons were fleeing north for 3 to 4 months of the year, John Davis became one of the first theater managers in New Orleans to tour his acting company outside of their regular home theater. Playing in the smaller towns along the way, Davis brought his New Orleans company to the northern states during the summers, earning accolades and drawing northern audiences down to the city during the fall and winter seasons. Under Davis's management, the Orleans played host to the greatest opera singers in the world during its tenure, establishing New Orleans as the top theatrical city in the nation. Théâtre d'Orléans would dominate the city for decades, as would Francophone performers. Since the Americans took ownership of the city, men like William Duff, A. Cargill, and another actor-manager, Aaron Phillips, had managed to perform plays in English with varying degrees of success, but none of them were able to parlay that success into a brick-and-mortar English-language theater of their own. The old Creole families also resented the Americans and their brash ways, which went against the genteel European customs of the city. Being the largest part of the populace and having control over much of the property in their beloved Vieux Carré, English-language theater would continue to struggle. If English theater was to grow, it would have to be on the other side of Canal Street, where the Americans were taking over. Enter English-born actor-manager James Caldwell. Having only been in America for 4 years, he was already a great success in Charleston, South Carolina, and had just built a new theater house in Petersburg, Virginia, when he announced the arrival of his American company in New Orleans for the 1819-1820 season. Caldwell had not yet leased a theater for his troupe when he arrived in New Orleans. He would, most likely, have taken the large Theatre Orleans, which was dark 3 nights of the week when the French company wasn't performing. That is, if Aaron Phillips hadn't beaten him to it. Phillips had come to New Orleans with the intention of establishing an English-language theater, believing that he would have no competition. On hearing of the famous James Caldwell's imminent arrival, he hastily booked the Orleans and threw together a ragtag company of dubious talents. Caldwell was left to take over the smaller, older St. Philip Theater, which he described as an old and dilapidated French theater. Philip's ambitious enterprise failed immediately, and more than he realized. He announced his release from his contract with the Théâtre d'Orléans, then abandoned the troupe that he assembled, leaving the city. It was Caldwell who bought out the remainder of Philip's lease and would come to hire some of his actors in later months. For most of the season, James Caldwell managed the only 2 theaters in town, as well as the Olympian Circus, a large venue connected with the St. Philip and operated in the open area around Poydras and Baronne Streets. By trying to beat out Caldwell, Aaron Phillips made him the only game in town. The curtain time for a Caldwell show was 6:30 p.m., with the doors opening an hour earlier. Between the 2 theaters over the next few months, he presented 72 shows consisting of a play, usually a drama or classic tragedy, and then an afterpiece. An afterpiece was a humorous one-act farce or musical presentation that closed the evening's entertainment on a high note. after pieces were popular in the 18th and 19th centuries. On top of directing, staging, and administering both theaters, Caldwell was also the American company's leading actor, performing nearly every night. Caldwell had 3 good seasons of mostly good, if controversial, receptions from the New Orleans audiences. In his success, he even hired competitor Noah Ludlow into his acting company in 1821. While the critics had issues with the quality of some of his productions, it was agreed that Caldwell himself was an exceptional actor and very popular with the audiences. But that popularity was generally within the American citizenry. As early as 1819, local journals opined that a theater opened in the upper part of the city could be assured of the patronage of an audience of English-speaking patrons. The area was then a suburb of the Vieux Carré called the Faubourg Sainte-Marie. It's today's central business district. The United States had taken over the area and, with a steady influx of Americans and European immigrants, they were building their own town on the other side of Canal Street, and Caldwell was ready to make his move. Tensions between the French company at the Théâtre d'Orléans and Caldwell's American company had been coming to a boil for quite some time. Cultural, professional, and financial jealousies had grown untenable. An example of the animosity between the companies was a mutual exclusion pact. On the evenings one company performed, members of the other company were forbidden from entering the theater without the written permission of either John Davis or James Caldwell. In February of 1823, an American company actor named Beebe attempted to enter the stage door on a night that the French company was performing. The Creole doorman, called simply Odo in the newspapers, refused Beebe entrance. An argument quickly escalated, ending with Beebe murdering Odo with a sword hidden in his walking cane. Beebe claimed self-defense at trial and was acquitted of murder by an American judge. This event caused so much animosity and anger between the two companies, at the conclusion of the season, Caldwell and his American company left the Orleans and the Vieux Carré permanently. A year before, Caldwell had purchased 2 lots on Camp Street between Gravier and Poydras, then an uninhabited area with a few cotton and tobacco warehouses nearby. On New Year's Day of 1824, he opened the American Theatre, commonly referred to as the Camp Theatre, establishing the first dedicated English-language theater in New Orleans. The Camp was a stark 3-story brick building, its only remarkable architectural feature being the marble staircase from the street to the front entrance. In 1825, the German General Charles Augustus, Grand Duke of Saxe-Weimar-Eisenach, visited the camp and commented in his memoirs on the triple row of galleries with low balustrades he likened to looking out from a balcony. He also liked the tasteful gas fixtures in the saloon. Caldwell introduced gas lighting to New Orleans via the interior lighting of the theater and frequent demonstrations throughout the season. Though based in New Orleans, Caldwell was also managing director of theater empires in St. Louis and Cincinnati, which helped to attract the superstars of early 19th century theater to his employ. These include the great tragedian Edwin Forrest, renowned English actor Thomas Abthorpe Cooper, one of the first American stage stars, the lovely Frances Denny Drake, America's most famous actress at the time, and the celebrated French dancer Mademoiselle Celeste. Having succeeded with lighting the Camp Theatre, Caldwell announced his retirement from theater in 1833 and the formation of the New Orleans Gas Light and Banking Company to bring modern gas lighting to the streets of New Orleans. He financed the installation of gas lines in the new city, completing the astounding mission in September of 1833 and creating New Orleans' first utility. And, as with any utility, problems developed. Gas supply issues and New Orleans politics took control of the gas company from Caldwell, and in 1835 he announced his grand return to the New Orleans Theatre. He came back to the management of the camp in turmoil after the sudden death of one of the managers to whom Caldwell had leased. He also came back to audiences who were growing tired of what was then called the starring system at the camp. Critics accused Caldwell of allowing his desire to act alongside the greatest actors of the age to foster repetition and limited repertoires for many seasons, calling it the death of drama. Caldwell still had drawing power from his other theatrical enterprises, as well as a brand new venue mere blocks away from the American Theatre. In 1835, he opened the St. Charles Theatre, It was the most expensive theater in the South, seating 4,000 people in neo-Renaissance splendor, all lit with the latest in gas fixtures inside and out. Whereas the camp was known for its Spartan exterior, the facade of the St. Charles was highly ornate, a theatrical palace. It was here that Caldwell would transform the career of a struggling third-rate opera singer into the most famous dramatic actress of the 19th century. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video and follow us on all of your social media at NOLA Voice Theatre. Next time, we chart the return of Caldwell, the rise of a new superstar, and the competition that would ultimately end Caldwell's theatrical career. For NOLA Voice Theatre, I'm Vatican Loki.